So, hello and welcome to another episode of Interviews with Innovators. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this is The Way to Be. Today's March the 3rd of 2025, and my special guest is checking in from the other side of the world to share a new way to collect small amounts of honey and complete the honey harvest right on your kitchen counter or even still in the bee yard. The Micro Honey Harvester is a concept that is in its final design stages, and we catch up with Simon Mildren in Victoria, Australia. I hope you'll watch to the very end as I have some of my own ideas regarding how this unique harvesting system may be used by researchers. Here's Simon. So, hello, Simon. Welcome to The Way to Be, and I want to thank you for connecting with me and scheduling this all the way on the other side of the world. So this is going to be fantastic for me. It's kind of a selfish thing on my part because these are things I personally want to know about your innovation. And I'm just going to ask questions that interest me, and then hopefully others will find that their curiosity is satisfied also. So if you would just introduce yourself and tell us where you're located in the world and what you do for a living.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so very much. It's great to be here, Frederick. It really is. And my name's Simon Mildren. I'm all the way down here in Melbourne, Australia. So we're quite a far distance apart, obviously. But my company is Hive Keepers, and I'll show you what we've got here shortly. But not only do I love bees and have spent the last 15 years with bees and the last 8 years playing around with innovations, but I'm also a firefighter, and I've been a firefighter for about 18 years. So you put the two together, and they complement each other quite well, I've got to say.
That is really interesting. I don't know if you realize I'm also a firefighter and a fire marshal and flight deck crash and rescue on-scene leader, the whole
There
nine
you go.
yards. So look, we're already connected.
Look at that.
So you're a professional firefighter full time.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a professional firefighter down here in Melbourne. And as I said, I've been doing that for about 18 years. And I think you know what it's like. If you've got that sort of work life, you need other things. And it's the bees that make such a big difference. I was just speaking with someone last night who was a long-term veteran of the police force over here. And we we're just talking about that mental well-being piece. Spending time with your bees is just such a great way to relax, stop thinking about all those other things that can be troubling, and it's just a real reward, isn't it? Real reward for your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And mine was on active duty in the Navy, so these were flight deck, shipboard firefighting, things like that.
Yep.
So nothing as dramatic as brush fires, bush fires, whatever. Did you have involvement in that when there were so many fires going on in Australia?
Yeah, and I think back when you would have seen the last of that was maybe about 5 years ago, and it was unbelievable, really, how much fire we had across the landscape. And I had a real privilege then. I was sent down with just a team of three of us to go and investigate what was happening in a small town, well in the hills or in the mountains here in eastern Victoria. And we were the only three people in town looking after about 150 people. It wasn't meant to be that way, but sometimes that's just what happens in emergencies. You don't know what to always expect. And that was a wild ride. That was a really wild ride. That's one memory among many, but that's one that's always stood out for me. And to get this town through a huge fire was an amazing experience.
Mhm. So a lot of that was fueled by a lack of rain and just the general environment was kind of primed for brush fires.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Long-term drought,
Yeah.
conditions that had been difficult, and just the extreme weather. It used to be 15, 20 years ago, the occasional hot day would cause us trouble, but when you have three or four in a row, after a week earlier, you'd have the exact same thing. That
Mhm.
didn't what used to be like that. It's a real change in how we've had to deal with it. There's just so much more of that, and it doesn't really let up. You don't get a break from it for months, it
Mhm.
seems to be now. And I think that's true too to what goes on across North America these days. Is that fair to say?
Well, it's a dynamic situation, that's
Yeah.
for sure. So how's the
Yeah.
climate today? What are the things looking like for this year?
It's been for down here in Victoria, which is the state that I'm in. We're in the southeast corner of Australia. It's been a dry summer for a lot of the areas. There's active fire in the landscape all the time. Fortunately, there's not been much loss this year, so there's certainly been no loss of life, not that I've heard of yet anyway. But there's been busy fire brigades. They've definitely been working hard since about, I'll say, November, and I think everyone looks forward to in the next maybe 3 to 4 weeks for the rain to come through, for the change of season, and for everyone just to know that means we're probably over the worst bit. But maybe there's a few weeks left to go, Frederick, that we need to work through. But it's certainly we're getting to the end of it finally.
Now, how did that impact beekeeping, bee management,
Oh,
and commercial scale beekeepers there?
yeah. Look, it's the commercial scale beekeepers that really do have the issue, isn't it? Because they're always looking for our native forests are full of amazing flora, and they're obviously moving around the landscape to take advantage of the different flowering that happens at this time of year. And for them, there's certainly thousands of beehives that I've heard about that have been lost in some of our largest national parks. And whilst thousands doesn't necessarily sound like a lot, we know what that means for the beekeepers involved. That's a real change to their livelihood overnight or in an instant. So there's what it also means though is our eucalypt species, which is the predominant vegetation in our forests,
Mhm.
they won't be reflowering now for some years, and for some of those it could be 10 or 15 years. And I'm not a plant expert, but at least for 5 years we won't have for those forests producing for the beekeepers. So the experienced beekeepers would cope and manage, and they would have other opportunities that they'd be aware of. But those that are still learning the industry, trying to find a way in, that's going to be hard work for them.
Mhm.
They're still looking for more. They're still trying to understand what it is to do this. That's going to be hard work, and you really feel for them. And we've got beekeepers in the north of the country at the moment. I don't know how your Australian geography is, but up in Brisbane, which is up the east coast, about halfway up our east coast, they're about to. Right now, they're suffering from a huge cyclone, and I feel for all the beekeepers up there because to be able to, I mean, I guess it's going to be going through a large city, this cyclone. So it's the small scale beekeepers there that I'm thinking of in particular, and that's going to be really tough for them. You've seen it with your large storms and what have you. This is tough times. So to think they call us the lands of flooding, rains, and fire. It's all happening all at once right now. It seems to be.
And can you describe what the conditions are that make something a cyclone as apart from a normal storm situation?
Um, would you? I think you might use the word hurricane. So a hurricane, so just a very deep low pressure system, a really deep low pressure system, and they're expecting a serious storm surge to go with that. And given they're on the coast up there, it all depends on whether when it crosses the coastline, if it's crossing the coastline when there's a high tide or a low tide locally, that changes a lot. But they're expecting, I'm not sure how to put it across quickly in inches, but they're expecting 800 millimetres of rain in about 24 hours. To put that into context, that's more than where I live gets down here in the south in a year. They're expecting that in one day essentially. So that's unbelievable. And I think that the last check they've warned about 20,000 properties might be at flood risk from this. So it's a very serious situation. I think waking up this morning over here, a quick look at the news, I think they've played it down a little bit, that maybe it's going to soften its impact a bit. I guess in the next by the end of this weekend we'll know what's happened. But look, to the beekeepers up there, I hope they can get through it. But to the general people up there as well, there's tough times ahead.
Wow. Well, let's hope for the best. And I'm glad to hear that they might be changing conditions and forecasts on that for the better.
Yeah, we hope
What's
so.
your personal background with beekeeping?
I started about 15 years ago, and I guess, Frederick, the main reasons people choose to get into beekeeping, there's a lot of different reasons, really, isn't there? But about 15 years ago, I lived on this beautiful 10-acre property in the Yarra Valley. It's a beautiful wine growing area, but just lots of orchards. And our own property we had about 50 fruit trees that I'd put most of them there myself. We had a huge enclosure with berries, chickens, the vegetable garden. It was amazing. And anything I could do for myself, I was trying to find out how to do. And it wasn't that bees came first with the idea of why I have bees. It actually became because I actually wanted to make my own beer. And I'd been making my own beer for a while, and I just knew there was this type of beer, a honey wheat beer, and I thought, well, I can grow wheat. I better be able to find a way to get my own honey. And it was because of that the desire to make my own honey wheat beer that eventually I got into bees. Did a course, a small course, a recreational beekeepers course for 2 days, and before you know it, I had bees. And like all these things, it starts with small intentions of keeping it small and simple and easy, and it grew very quickly. And it grew to around about 5 hives within that first year. Then over time, I've managed to contain that problem a little bit, but I've been up to about the 15 or 20 hives mark. And now where I live is a smaller area, more residential and more urban, and I'm just settled with two hives is my average. I have 3 at the moment, of course. And so that was 15 years ago I started beekeeping. And yeah, it's been interesting doing that in 2 different locations. There's lots. You think you've got a good idea, and then you're quickly humbled by what goes on around you and what you learn. But I've got a lovely spot where we are now. We're not too far from the coast, and we've got lots of amazing coastal plants which give us really good nectar flow during winter. So I mean, we're fairly mild down here. We have a daytime temperature in Celsius at around 13 to 15 degrees during winter. So bees are still flying, and they're getting out there, and they're finding these coastal banksias, tea trees, lots of other plants that are out there flowering through the wintertime in our forests down where we live. So we've got a really amazing area. Now, I never had that where I used to have the bees. So it's nice to have that. It's a really comfortable place to keep bees, I find. Mm-hmm. Very fortunate.
So another question I have to ask, because people are going to ask it. So in New South Wales, in that area, you've got the Varroa destructor mite making its way into beekeeping there. Is your area currently dealing with that now, or have you not seen them yet?
We don't have them. I'm fairly confident we don't have them in our area at this point in time. So the state boundary between New South Wales and Victoria is a few hundred kilometres away from where I am. There was a report about 4 or 5 days ago now that there was Varroa mite in hives in an area called Maldon, which is not far from Ballarat, where I just spent last night with a beekeeping club. And that was the talk that they were having up there. But that came down in an infected colony that those hives were going to die. If they didn't come off the location that they were in the desert, they were going to die, and a decision was made to bring them closer. Now, we're at that point, Frederick, of talking about individual loads of bees which have Varroa, rather than talking about how it's moving across the landscape. So we're still at that very early stage down here. I think that would be the 3rd location that it's been confirmed that there's Varroa destructor here in Victoria. So we're way back at the beginning for us. We know that this is only a short amount of time before that will change. Where the bees are with that mite load in them at the moment is in an area that is it's the beekeeping golden triangle zone, where there's lots of quality honey produced right now. There'll be lots of beehives in those areas. So guess what? We've not got long. And I've been encouraged, especially seeing this bee club last night, really encouraged in the conversation that's happening. I was over in Galveston, Texas for one of the conferences that you had there about 8 years ago. I've been to lots of conferences in New Zealand to see what's happening there. And I just thought, how are we going to step up and be mature enough, sensible enough to work through this? when it first was reported here a few years ago. And I'm grateful now to see that the effort and the concern and the lessons from a far afield, we're learning them. We're going to be okay. We know it's not good news, but are we okay up here? I think we're okay up here, which is going to give us the best chance of coping and finding a way to work through that. It's been done elsewhere, hasn't it? So we just have to take the reality and just get on with it and be prepared.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about honey quality and medicinal honeys in particular. In New Zealand, we know that they have Manuka honey that they celebrate there as highly medicinal. Is there some honey variety near where you are or in Australia where there may be some medicinal value which would up again the marketability of small honey sampling?
Yeah. Look, do you know, there's so many great experts out there in this, and anything I say to you right now, they're just going to go, Simon, what are you saying? But I can at least, I like to learn more about this. And up our east coast, in fact, in areas that are going to be affected by this cyclone, there's an amazing amount of our own species of tea tree, which is Manuka, which is the Manuka species. Okay. And we have what's the term, Frederick, that they use? The bioactive level. It's skipped my mind right now, but the bioactive level in that honey is at levels that far exceed what happens in New Zealand Manuka honey. And the problem is, and I don't know enough about the debate that happened there between Australia and New Zealand. There's been one, and I think it's been pretty emotional for a lot of people, okay. But we've got high quality medicinal Manuka honeys. We just haven't found our way to market that as we should and to share that with the world. And over on the west coast, which is 4,000 kilometres from where I am, in Western Australia, they have species over there which are highly valued for their medicinal qualities. Now, I'm not going to do justice to that either, but Jarrah is one of those that comes to mind. And a lot of others that are really special out of the Western Australian forests. Between Western Australia and the East Coast, we've got a huge area, thousands of kilometres of desert. So there's very distinct vegetation types from one side of Australia to the other, which I guess makes sense. And because it's hard for anything to cross that gap there, they're so distinct that they've developed quite independently. And look, there's some amazing experts, Frederick, that in Western Australia, if this is a topic of your interest, you would love to talk to them. There's simply not enough knowledge I have about that, but there's a lot growing in that space, and there's lots of people out there right now saying, Simon, you've got so much more you need to say about Australian amazing honey, but I'll better leave that to them.
Okay, well, you're a wise man, Simon. You understand social media and the way it can turn on you.
So, oh yeah, of course.
So this leads us to why did you feel there was a need for another smaller scale harvesting system, and what got you started? What was your source of inspiration to even undergo something like this?
Oh, you've got to be a bit crazy to do something like this. But when it was around 8 years ago, maybe I should say 9 years ago now, and we were talking at the start about mental well-being. We've talked a little bit about the fire brigade. In the fire brigade, for me, I got to a rank which was enough, but it stopped the learning for me. I like getting on a fire truck. I like that side of it. If I was to go further in learning, it would take me away from being on a fire truck, and I wasn't ready for that. But I was ready for more learning. I was ready to discover what next, and I knew that I was very passionate about beekeeping and learning. And back then, I decided rather than go back to university, rather than try to figure out what next in my job, I'm going to go and build a business. Now, I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever, but that's what floated to the top of all the different ideas. And I decided at the time, well, I'm going to build some software for beekeepers because I keep losing my beekeeping records, and I've started out with some software. Now, I came over to Galveston, Texas, with a product which was the Hivekeepers app, and back then maybe there's a listener or two that would remember that, and maybe I've met them, and I followed that for about 3 years, and in that 3 years I found out that was really, really hard. It was really hard to keep software alive, and anyone out there who's doing that, congratulations, I've got to say it. But it's really hard. People are demanding, people want things for a lower price. They just think it should be a low price. They don't have the value around it. And I found it really difficult. So to cut that story short, I ended up moving away from that. And at the same time, I'd met lots of other really interesting technical pieces. And we started a project with smart beehives. And the area of focus we did back then with smart beehives was around Varroa detection beehives using image recognition. And we started to do some work locally for our government down here, our state government. And we had some technology in hives at our ports to try to track for, that's where it was expected the likely location we would find.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Was that part of that Sentinel Hive program where these things were on the entrances of the hives that would use AI?
Yeah. There's a range of different companies that were doing work in that. That's exactly what we were doing. We had cameras looking at the entrance. I worked with Sarah Cross from New Zealand on that a number of years ago. She was my location and my person with Varroa to help me help train out image recognition models with Varroa. And we did that work, and we were starting to see some good results from our technology, along with some other companies, because we all needed to do it. We were trying to keep Varroa out, and then you know what happens in that story. We got Varroa. We couldn't continue with our funding. And that's where that ended. And then we kept on going though, because we knew we were having a huge issue. Our honey in Australia was valued quite well. There was the issue of theft of beehives. I'm sure that's an issue for you over there as well. And we were then working with a GPS tracker there for quite some time and selling that. Well, guess what happens when Varroa comes and the government orders a stop on all beehives? No one wants their hives tracked, because no one wants to steal beehives at the moment, because the whole industry was afraid. And I get that. So our business there stopped instantly overnight. Beekeepers that we were serving wanted to stop their subscriptions. All our sales pipelines stopped, and I just went, wow, what a wild ride this entrepreneurship thing is. But then I thought, no, I'm going to keep going. In fact, I nearly decided to end it then, to be honest. That's enough. The business has done its thing. I've learnt a lot. And then every now and again, you come across a really good advisor or mentor who knows how to push your buttons and keep you going. And that's what happened here with this. And I went back, Frederick, with over the years of learning and customer conversations, which there's been many, the small scale beekeeper is often still not satisfied with how to get honey out of their hive. And I thought, that's been there the whole time. And it was my experience too. I've had all the different uncapping equipment. I've had all the different types of way to filter. And I've tried lots of different extractors. And my satisfaction was just not quite there, but that's what I thought I always had to do. And I never ever wanted the quantity of honey that I was getting. And I realised that was not just my belief, but it was lots of other people's thoughts and ideas as well. They were showing frustration, but most people just put up with whatever it's got. And as you know, there's other innovations that have been out there over the years, and that's not always satisfied everyone either. So I just started working on this 3 years ago with a design company here in Australia. And we went back to the beginning. I had a fair idea where we needed to go with this technology to solve the problem, but it was an amazing thing to get this whole design team, start from the beginning and go, what do you think? Because they're the experts in industrial design. But that's where we ended up with a system like you see here, where we're working with the existing frame system of a Langstroth hive. We wanted to be able to make honey harvesting quicker. That was one part of it. It had to, one of the key criteria was we wanted it to be able to be quicker. We wanted to remove some of the steps if we could find a way. We wanted to remove some of the steps, and I've already mentioned uncapping. Filtering was also part of that. And for a lot of people, me included, I didn't want to spend my whole weekend cleaning up afterwards. And some people say to me, I don't know what you mean, Simon, by cleaning up all that time. I don't know what you're doing, why it takes so long for you, what are you doing? But that is my reality. And it's a reality of where we're at last night when I said exactly that same line to a lot of beekeepers at this beekeeping club. They just like, exactly, all this cleanup and effort is tiring, and they want to be with their bees. They want to be spending the majority of their time with their bees, which is exactly my experience. Being there with them is what I did this for. And hey, I'd love a little bit of honey, but I don't need dozens of kilos of honey. I'm not trying to feed my neighbourhood, but I want the pleasure of the bees. So I guess they're the stories, Frederick, that go into why we've got what we've got here. And I've got to be honest, we've ticked most of those boxes. We've been able to remove most of those problems, and it's taken us 3 years to get to where I am now. And that's working with beekeepers and obviously clever people that know how to build things and can help me with this. But that's I guess, the journey to where we're sitting now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say that I like, and I'm glad the unit's sitting right there beside you, that it fits the most popular hive configuration in the world, which is Langstroth. That looks like a Langstroth deep frame right there with your inserts.
Sure is.
And yeah, this is a great time for you to introduce the components and how they might work.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let me introduce you to the Hivekeeper's Micro Honey Harvester. And the components are all sitting there in front of you. And you can see, as you've already pointed out, we've just got a standard full depth Langstroth frame there. You can see here there's 8 sections on that frame, which are all independent of each other. I've taken one of those cassettes out here, and we can look more closely at those in a moment. And it's just designed to replace that standard frame. Take one out, drop one in, and then I'll show you the inner workings of that in a moment. But then you need something which allows you to get that honey out, and that's what we have here. I'm just going to lift it forward to you. This is the device. I said I want it to be small, and I actually wanted it to be able to look okay in my kitchen, to be honest. But it had to also be something which a beekeeper can take down to their hives and harvest honey down at their hives. Not talking about sitting there for 2 or 3 hours and harvesting box after box after box, but I only want to be able to take a handful of, I'm happy taking 200 or 300 grams or 800 grams every now and again, just what I need with the family. So that's what the design is here, is small, simple, compact, with that volume in mind. I'll lift this up here for you, Frederick. This is just a little bit easier to show you one and pull one apart that's not got honey in it. So this here is the frame. The next step is to be able to provide them in different common sizes, ideals or your more short frames. I can't remember the name of what you call that size off the top of my head.
We have medium and shallow frames as well.
Yeah. So it's really important to work in with your systems. This is what we'll go live with for our initial crowdfunding launch, and then we'll quickly follow on with others. We obviously need to get to a point where we've got a sustainable business, that we can see that there's interest, and then we'll obviously keep working to other sizes. Now, these cassettes here come out nice and easily, and then there's 2 parts, and that's what I'll show you next. And you can tell me if I need to just adjust my position, but I'll go on anyway. So there's 2 parts here. They're different colours, quite deliberately, because they're just slightly different. So we wanted to make that really obvious. When they're together, I guess the easiest way to say it, when they're together, these cells have a proper base at the bottom. In fact, the base is so well engineered, it's the same shape the bees would create. It's that rhomboidal structure that a bee would naturally work towards. So together like this, both sides have a full bottom cell structure. When apart, that changes. And I'll do my best to hold this up in a way which makes it relatively clear, although I realise that focus might be a bit of an issue.
If you hide your face behind it, it will focus on the component.
All right, tell me if that's coming up for you.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, yeah, now I see it. That's good.
Yeah, great. So,
okay, great.
Whether it's perfectly obvious to you or not, I'll explain it anyway. What's going on there is at the bottom of each cell, half of it is covered. So that when you combine this face with the other face of the other half of the cassette, That's where it blocks it
Oh,
off completely.
it completes it when you have both sides together.
Spot on.
Okay. All right,
That's exactly.
you can
I don't know what angle that looks. Oh, there you go.
yeah,
That's not a
no, but
bad
it's
one.
clear now. We can see that it's offset. So they are offset just as they are in the real comb then.
That's right.
Okay.
And that is the it's that part of it, how it comes together. That is the technical part of this invention. This here is a centrifugal harvester. I haven't invented anything that you wouldn't have been familiar with there. We're obviously working in with the existing frame, but the technical piece is this. This is how this comes together and how this part of it works. So the next step's probably quite obvious to you in that the bees need to do their thing. So the bees will put nectar in there, ripen that into delicious honey, and then they'll cap it off. And that's what you can obviously see is happening over here. And then it comes to the harvester. Now the harvester doesn't actually, just so I don't know how apparent it is, it's not very heavy, but it's solid enough that it sits on the bench and doesn't wobble around when you use it. But it's also easy to carry down to where your beehives are if you need to walk to them in your backyard or take them out, take them away from your car if you have to drive to your hives and go somewhere. And then this has only got a few simple components. Firstly, there's a lid. I like a lid because the odd occasional bee might want to come and visit, and you don't want to drop something in there accidentally when you're harvesting. Then there's a component in here which is, I'll call it the carrier. That's the word I seem to go with. That's the carrier. I'll show you how that comes together in a minute. We can actually do a harvest with you. There's the bowl here which comes off the base. And then there's the base, which is just a battery-powered base. It can stay plugged in, but realistically, it just supports the whole unit, provides the power to turn the actual spindle in the middle to make it all work. Now, if I put it all back together, would you like to see a harvest?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Can I ask a question first about the battery
Please.
that's in the base? So if they're using it, you have the option to plug it in or run from the batteries.
That's right.
Are the batteries proprietary? I mean, is it something that the consumer will be able to change out? What's the life expectancy?
So they're lithium-ion rechargeable batteries. I don't expect for the life of the unit that anyone needs to change them out. We know that anything like that does have a lifetime or an expiry time or a useful lifetime on it. But these are normal batteries, just in batteries provided. When I say normal, they're not the ones that you can go and buy at your local grocer or supermarket. They're built into the unit, and they've got the number of charging time opportunities on that is 1,000 or 10,000. It's a number that seems quite high to me. I can't remember the exact number.
So many years anyway. Yeah.
There's not a problem with that. And to leave it plugged in, if you need it, we've designed the battery capacity in this to easily harvest 2 full frames of our cassettes. So that's 16 pairs of cassettes. We actually designed it to be 20 pairs of cassettes, but I feel like I'd like to say 2 frames worth. Okay. And we also designed this bowl around the idea of storing 2 frames worth of honey. Now, that depends on what your bees do, of course, because if they really build it out, because they've got an amazing honey flow, they build it out, then you might get a little bit more than 1.5 kilograms off each frame of ours, because that's roughly the available quantity or volume ends up being about 1.5 kilos off each frame, which I realise is a bit less than what most people would expect. That's could be even half the amount compared to what some people would try to get out of a normal frame, but fits in well with our goal of trying not to think that we need to just harvest endless amounts of honey. Mm-hmm. So that's a bit about the battery. You can leave it in. That's a little bit about the volume, 2 frames worth. Do you want me to show you the next bit?
Yep.
So here you can see a cassette has been nicely used. What's great about this, and they couldn't stop talking about it last night at the Beekeeping Club, is when it comes to a frame, we know the bees don't necessarily put honey in there how we might want them to. they'll be very methodical for themselves, and it'll come out from the centre, no doubt, and slowly radiate out from a particular point. What that allows us to do when we've got this size cassette is harvest small sections of the frame at once that are ready and capped at the time that you're there. Whereas it might be out the side here or across the top, depending on what the bees are doing, as you'd know, they're not ready. The honey would not necessarily always be ready. So this gives you great flexibility. And I think the idea, I don't think I've mentioned it enough just yet, to be able to harvest honey while you're inspecting your hive or just doing your normal work with your hive, you could just come in and take small amounts and do that simply and quickly whilst you're doing a normal beehive inspection. So by having small sections allows you to really just focus on a little bit here and there whilst you're doing your normal work. And that was a really big deal for me, is to make it fit in with your normal inspections. I don't know how you would do, how people would do that now. I just don't think it's simply that easy to do. So that's what's great about this. But I can't wait to show you. So shall I get right into it?
Yeah, absolutely.
The version that we've got coming up has this beautiful key that just cracks it and pops it open, but this is what we're working with while we're still with our R&D research and development hives. So when you pull it apart, I'm not sure I can line it up so perfectly. You'll get a little bit of honey that comes out. That's pretty normal, but it otherwise holds in really well. And I'm holding it above the keyboard of my laptop, and there's not a drop coming out there. So there's that. Remembering that the cappings stay on. You don't remove the cappings. Now I'm going to slide this in here. I'll bring it forward a little bit. I'm actually just going to put that down. And the cappings are facing inwards. Haven't removed cappings, which I can't say enough because that's the bit that I personally really enjoy not having to worry about anymore.
Now, just for reference, what's the temperature of the room that you're in and the temperature of the honey right now?
I'm going to say 20 degrees, and the honey would be about the same. It's been in here overnight with me. In fact, this is a bit personal. I sleep a bit warm, so I like to have the cooling on, and I'll have the cooling on around 20 degrees. It's been quite warm on our nights lately, so that's been good. All right, so I should say too, Frederick, relating to temperature, when you take these cassettes straight out of the beehive, I didn't realise what it was like to harvest honey that is that fresh and at that temperature of the hive. I've been missing something for the last 15 years, which is that. And when you harvest with them so fresh out of the hive, the way it flows is stunning. It's simply amazing. And it comes out much easier than just like this has now been out of the hive since yesterday. I'm traveling on the road at the moment. I had to have them out of the hives. It will flow beautifully here, but there's something different about it when it's straight out of the hive. Have you noticed that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's great. Now, I just want to get this in a position which doesn't have too many reflections on it so you can see it in its finest. And then all we're going to do, I assume I've turned it on, I have, is just press the button and it will spin for 20 seconds. So I'll just let it do its thing. And in that 20 seconds, the first few seconds, it just builds up its speed. I don't think you'll hear a lot because it's actually really quiet. So if you're not hearing anything, that's just the way it is. Anyway, let's make it happen.
Yeah, who doesn't want to watch that?
I find it absolutely stunning to watch. And the most excited people, apart from beekeepers that just go, yes, are kids. I love watching kids enjoy it, and they can finally get involved with, my kids, when they got involved with harvesting when I was younger, they'd be there for the first 10 minutes and I'd be there for the next 4 or 5 hours on my own. But with this, and that's just slowing down now, but with this, it's just quick and easy. You can share this so easily with families. I had a phone call with someone up in Alberta, and they're like, Simon, do you think I could take this sort of thing to a market and harvest my honey directly in front of my customers? And I said, I absolutely think you could do that. I think you could give a special experience like that. How they make that work would be up to them initially, but yeah, that's exactly how it is. Now, You can already see that straining down the side of the container there. It never feels like a lot when I first do the harvest. I always look in there and go, that's not much, but it seems to be that once you start scooping it up and scraping it up, it makes a huge, you actually have got quite a lot. Now, for me, I normally like to hit the button twice, especially since it's been sitting here overnight, so I'll just let it go a little bit more. But it'll also be proof that we got most of it out the first spin. And when I say most, I think it'd be fair to say at least 70 to 80%.
Yeah, and you can see it. I mean, you can see it still slinging against the wall. So it has a set time duration. Do you know what the peak RPMs are?
I don't remember what the RPMs are, but then when we first created this, we had it at a set point, and I said to the design team, halve it, whatever it is, halve it. I want it to be slower because we're getting the honey out almost too quickly. And if there's loose bits of beeswax, I didn't want them coming through into the honey. But also what we found, and I don't know if this is sensible, but we did it, is it looks nicer at a slower speed. It actually, that you said it yourself before, who could get sick of that? It's really nice when it was just backed off a little bit, just to see what it was like. And I think we've got that at about the right point now. It's not aggressive. We have a lid for a reason. We don't want people to put their hands in there. That's just a simple consumer safety thing. But we should get in here and have a look. And I really want to show you, like the other concern I explained before is about that I didn't like and like people worry about is filtering. Let's have a look and see if you would filter this honey before you'd have any. So that central piece comes out.
Now I have a question. I have a question about that. So they're at an angle. Is that angle intended? It looks like it's about maybe a 4-degree angle or something.
So we started with that angle. We wanted to try a few things. These cassettes, and I'll just hold up a separate one at the moment, is on the 11-degree angle that a bee would use. Or
so we're saying the cells themselves are at an 11-degree angle?
They are. Now we're changing that, because we're actually just going to go back to horizontal for the version that we bring to market, and we can talk about that in a minute. But we originally went with the angle on there, on the cassette, and an angle on here, so that it would come out horizontally. Almost, how do I show you this? Almost that if you put it in upside down, it would be, I'm not sure I'm showing you that as best as I can, but that they would be horizontal coming out the side. We've also learnt that that doesn't actually matter. There's enough spin, there's enough velocity, the honey's coming out. We can try all these other tricks. The important bit is the rotation and the centrifugal force gets the honey out. And it's done such a good job, it's probably, I'll put it in front of my face, it might focus a bit better then, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's done such a good job that that's not even sticky.
Okay.
It's not even sticky. I could hold it like this, and I don't think in my laptop wouldn't appreciate it if something came out, but there's nothing coming out. It's done a really thorough job. And then this just simply comes off, and I'll let you, let's see. In here, there will be a few bits of beeswax. I can see one bit that's down on the side here, up on the wall. I think where my thumb is pointing, you can see one little bit. And then down over the other side, a bit hard to see, there's another bit down there. Nothing that would be more troubling than having a teaspoon and quickly removing those bits. But I'll be honest, that wouldn't bother the average beekeeper if that went on their toast. You're just not going to even think about it. So right now, it's all sort of sitting on the sides and it's slowly coming down to the bottom. I can start to put that into a bowl to give you a separate idea of how much quantity there is. But that just takes a bit of time for me to do that. Do you want me to try and do that for you?
I don't know if you have to, but you could. That central riser keeps the honey from interacting with your spindle there. So about what is the capacity before the honey would get over that center?
Brilliant question. So that takes up to about 2 litres.
2 liters, okay.
And that 2 litres is about the volume we expect to get out of 2 frames.
Okay.
So designed with that deliberately in mind. I will try and get this out whilst we're talking, but if you've got other questions while I clean up my honey and just put this into a bowl, happy to take them.
So for right now, you have just the design for the deep Langstroth frame. The others are concepts, right?
That's exactly right. So that's not. Had someone else ask me last night, Simon, when can I get them because they're important? And I said, oh, I don't want to make big bold promises because I don't have a time frame on those. But as soon as we've got this Kickstarter process up and away, I'll get a real clear indication quite quickly how well we're going with that. If we see the sort of progress that we'd like, we'll get onto the development work there. We've done a little bit of basic development. We haven't gone and built them yet, the shallower depth ones. But I was bold enough to say last night that we'd probably have them early next year, early 2026 in other formats.
Okay.
And I hope that saying that on the record with you now doesn't come back to bite me, but it might.
Yeah. Well,
We,
I'm really excited that you started with the deep frame because
okay,
that fits all my nucleus colonies. So,
sure.
so-
Yeah.
and
Have,
people are going to ask about the composition of the plastic because there's a lot of pushback on plastic in beehives. And would you
yes.
mind explaining what you ended up with material-wise for your?
Yeah, certainly. We're still talking with some different our plastic suppliers on what the final choice would be because believe it or not, it's not that simple. There's 8,000 different types of plastics we can choose from. Approximately half of those, so 4,000 are food grade. We obviously need to work in with that. Then there's different properties that go with those, and we're still making the final decision on how that needs to work. What's fascinating though is what's coming over the. I mean, that's what we're making now. We have no choice. We're working with plastics right now, and there's lots of good quality plastics which are already being used in similar settings. Just because we've got some design complications around, this is quite intricate, doesn't exclude us from using those commonly used plastics that are found out there in the food industry now.
Mhm.
So that's pleasing. We also know that it needs to be something that's recyclable. That's not hard either. So that ticks a box there. Where I'm really interested, and maybe someone's watching this right now, Fred, that goes, gee, Simon, you need to know about this. We're already working with some people here in Australia around some bioplastics. And these are non-petroleum based plastics because I too think about this. I think about it a lot actually. I know that the bees are happy to use what we've got here. I will say it's to be because anyone knows that if you use plastic in a beehive, it will take longer for the bees to show interest in this. You've
Mhm.
seen it, I've seen it. We know that. That's not a surprise. People need to expect that it will take longer. Maybe I'll ask you this question while you're here. Is we have the opportunity, and we have yet to decide if we're doing it, to spray these with a beeswax, some Australian beeswax here. And we can send these out already sprayed. We don't want people to dip them. Dipping them is not a good idea. What do you think your beekeepers would think about that if they were to come already pre-sprayed in beeswax?
Um, well, of course, being myself, I would do some sprayed and some not and see what the difference is with the bees.
Yeah,
Um,
good.
the That's not a big deal for me because I've seen the bees that are in highly populated colonies at the appropriate temperature go right in
They'll
and
go.
work, even treated unpre-sprayed or pre-coated, or even just lightly scraping beeswax over the entrance or the tops of those just to get them,
Yeah,
because they will rework wax that they find. So for me personally, I wouldn't do that extra step in production. It would add a
interesting. Yeah.
lot. Um, the only thing that you've talked about so far that I do have questions about, and I'm sure you're testing them anyway, but that angle of the cell, we've had problems with the bees working cells that were too shallow, that were almost straight horizontal, for example. Even people that made the mistake of putting in frames with drawn comb upside down, the bees were
Yes.
not using it then because wet nectar would just run out. So that I believe that angle is very important for acceptance as well. Bees definitely show a difference in how they use the cell based on the angle that's presented to them. So because you could just spray it even with a light sugar syrup to get them
Yes. You could.
interested or working it, and then you get that bee scent in there. I personally wouldn't go the extra yard and add it as a seller,
Yeah.
as a, you could offer it to people, but that's more important with foundation when they're drawing the comb. We know there's a definite correlation there that if you've got a nice heavy coat of beeswax on a plastic foundation, they'll work that first. In fact,
Yes.
they won't even work. Some plastic foundation that's not coated at all, they'll avoid it and build a second, you know,
Oh,
comb
yes, I've seen
hanger
that.
next to it. So I don't see that. I mean, you haven't seen that as an issue yet with yours.
No, I like the point you raised about changing or having not having the angle on there. The first version or the first two versions actually that we used didn't have the 11-degree angle. It was just horizontal. It was easier to design, easier to work with. We just needed to start somewhere. Then I said, when we designed this version, I said, can we try to see what difference there might be from having the angle there? With the angle side of it, we have not really been able to pick any huge difference. I'd have to, I don't have it on top of mind right now, but there's a scientific paper around that angle and the reasons for it, and it comes back to structural integrity of the honeycomb structure.
Yeah,
And when
load bearing capability, because with that up angle, you enhance the load bearing strength of the comb. Yeah.
and of course, bees have figured all that out.
Hmm.
No surprise there. We're dealing with something that's a bit more structurally capable than beeswax. So when it comes to that, it's interesting your point around bee behaviour. I haven't witnessed a difference yet. Have I done the perfect side-by-side study? I don't think so on that, but we're not really noticing. This year we've just had a terrible. Southeast Australia's had a terrible year. So to get honey into anything's been an absolute struggle for most people. That's more the dependent factor there for us. I'd be interested to know how people would go with them on the direct horizontal. I don't feel like we've had any issue there at this point in time, but always open to learn.
Yeah, that's good. All right.
So I'll jump back to this step. Did I answer all your questions there, Frederick? I didn't want to miss anything.
Oh no, keep going because I'll tell you my thoughts at the end.
Yeah, please do. So I'm not going to get up and go over and clean this now. So all I was saying there was the bowl takes about 30 seconds or so with some warm water and a cloth, and it's clean and it's ready to be put away, maybe dry it. There you go, another 10 seconds. So that's what we're pretty happy with, is reducing that workload for honey production down when it comes to the cleanup effort afterwards. These cassettes, I won't take it out right now, but they would come out of there, and there's two things that I think are worth pointing out. There is some beeswax on there. There's obviously still some honey. There will always be a little bit of honey left in there. I've been experimenting a lot with cassette design, and we're a few designs ahead of the one that I'm showing you here right now, because we noticed that with this particular design, you do get a bit of beeswax on here, which when you push them back together, doesn't let them come together as neatly as we'd like. And my tests though, well, we've overcome a lot of that with the new designs, but my test was, I wonder if the bees would clean this up quickly for me, because we know that the bees will remove their cappings overnight. That takes them 24 hours and those cappings, the beeswax has been moved. What would they do with the other side? So I've been putting these in the top of my beehive box and allowing them to clean them up, or seeing what happens in cleaning them up. Well, it happens quite quickly, I've learnt. And normally within that first day or so, most of that beeswax is gone. I'm hoping though that the next version, more than hoping, because we've spent a lot of time and effort with it, that the next version of this cassette fits together really well and clips together, and we have less beeswax sitting there preventing these to come back together neatly. Just holding it up there just for effect, but it does have a little bit that gets in the way and makes it not as smooth. But a little bit of a cleanup by the bees, back in there, and they'll be away using them again pretty quickly. And as you know, with plastic, if we've at least after their first time they've used it, it's much easier for them to continue to use it. They really have no issue with it after that. Yeah, so that completes the whole circuit, I hope, for you.
Oh, that was it? That's the whole presentation? What?
That's it. All finished.
Okay. No, that was really good, Simon. And here's one of the reasons that I'm actually very interested in this micro harvesting. And we do a lot of research with beekeepers where we have to submit honey samples to different
Yeah.
labs. And last year we were sampling honey from different hives once a week. This is a huge pain because you have to pull,
Mm.
even if you just have medium frames or shallow frames. We pull a frame, we're getting a small chunk of the frame, we're filling these vials, and we're
Yeah.
sending them off to the lab for testing. So when I saw this, I thought, oh, we can not only will we pull an individual cassette, have the sample we need, put another cassette in and put that right back in the hive, but now we've got the sample and we can write. You've got these great spaces in between those
Oh, yeah.
cassettes. We mark that with a grease pencil. We know exactly the date the sample was taken. We know exactly what week, that was refilled. And for the
Yep.
following samples, that means we also know what flora was available at the time the bees
Yes.
brought that in. So I'm seeing this as a really great research tool because we're also using it to find out where spotted lanternflies are showing up, and we're using that by finding where the honeydew
Yep.
is. So now we've got frames that are easily cataloged. We can even take them and freeze them for later, but write on them,
Good.
and it's back in service. So I understand the micro collection, and that's going to have a lot of appeal, especially for backyard beekeepers. As you said, they just want to get a small amount of honey, or the whole frame's not ready, and they often just fill the center first, or you'll see the top two full, and then the others are half full. You pull the full one, and you go to your harvest, and it's capped. So it has a lot of application, but for research and science, the end of that, you will get a lot of interest from universities. There are even programs where I guess I can talk about it, but they're trying to find human remains through honey. And this is something that nobody's put out a video yet. It's for obviously DNA shows up in flowers in the nectar because a decomposing body in the soil
No
has
way.
plants growing on it. The plants produce nectar and pollen, and now we have a means. Well, that now we know our bees, forage several miles or
Yes.
many kilometers in every direction. So now we have triangulation, and I see this as another tool for this is when we got it. This is when it showed up. It's stronger from this colony over here. Let's hone in on finding this site where human remains might be. And I know that's not very appealing to people to think it doesn't
That
show
is
up or flavor
fascinating.
your honey, but this is the magic of DNA. And so now
Yeah.
we can find it's a tool. And I think people down the road are going to learn more about that. But I'm just saying from the science end of it, micro collection in a controlled way with very small doses is going to have a very big appeal, in my opinion, just because I had such a hard time, just hive to hive, week by week. It was just a huge chore. This would have been something that everyone would have wanted to have as part of that study. So I
Yep.
think, have you thought about that
Yeah. So
type of
I've
thing?
got Latrobe University over here in Melbourne. I've had a long connection with them, probably now for 7 or so years, and that's absolutely they've got a small group there which look into honeybee research, and they're like, that's what we need for our sampling. We're on, so they're
Yeah.
ready to go. So we had an early indication that we'd provide value there. Uh, Without a doubt, people are going to need to know this. I'm curious about how in New Zealand, they're required to test all their honey after January the 1st, because there's a plant, someone will remind us what the plant is, I'm sure, which actually has toxic properties, and you can't
Right.
sell your honey. You
Yeah.
can't sell your honey with that product in there. So if you want to do that, you need to test it. I wonder how helpful we can be with that. Or are we a hindrance? I don't know, but
Yeah.
certainly see the value in being able to test small.
Simon, I don't know what your beekeepers are like there, but here they don't want to surrender anything. They don't want, half of them won't even register. So we have,
Oh, yeah.
they're doing their own thing. But we do not have mandatory testing here. We do have some honey that's called mad honey. So we do have some
Yeah.
potentially toxic plants. This again would make that kind of sampling very easy, but that's voluntary. We have no mandate to test or prove that your honey composition does not come from these toxic
Yes.
plants. So, I mean, they could attempt to institute that. You're just not going to find very many beekeepers willing to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
Can I share another wild thought? I'm
sure.
curious on if that's all right. I actually have a bit of a bold vision with all of this. I'm thrilled to think that we can provide something for researchers that makes it easy for them to test. I'm really excited that at home my own beekeeping experience can be made easier, and I hope to help lots of other people with that, because I know it's just such a pleasure to do this. If it can be made easier, that's great. But I get really excited about the thought, and I'll say it like this: what if you could harvest honey in your own home without even needing to be a beekeeper? And the reason I wanted to say it like that was, can you see a future where a commercial honey producer provides their honey in a format like this, rather than the squeezy bottle, rather than a jar, rather than however else they do it, and the home consumer can have that same experience that we had just here before with their family without needing to keep the bees? Does that give an opportunity to really elevate the qualities of honey and to bring in an interesting experience? Maybe not every family, every home is about to go and do that, but can we really give honey a different perspective to the consumer, where they get that experience? They get to have the experience of harvesting the honey. I know it'll make it easier for commercial producers. The example I always use here is, there's an area called the Little Desert. Most of it's burnt this year, which is a shame, but there's beautiful honey comes from there. If the beekeeper goes up there, has these cassettes nicely filled, they put it in another container, label it, and it's ready for market. Think of all the steps there that we don't no longer have to put the beekeeper or honey producer through, because that's going to be left for the home consumer, and the home consumer gets the privilege of that beautiful experience with the honey. And I don't know the science around this, Frederick. I really don't. But if you haven't, we all know what it's like to have the freshest honey that's just come out of a beehive. Well, if it remains capped, and the only time it was last exposed to the air was before it was complete honey in the beehive, you've got non-oxidated honey,
Right.
that is just there in the home for the home consumer. What a different experience that could be for people.
Well, you know what you need to do, Simon, is you need to enter that honey from those cassettes in a honey competition, specifically the Black Jar, what we call the Black Jar group.
Oh, yes.
There were honey sommeliers in Australia that sampled honey that had not been through processing, as compared to that which had been through all the normal processing. And there's no comparison. It was 100%. These honey tasters voted for that which had not been through processing. So you're in that category already, and I highly recommend that you submit that in some honey competitions. Just because people don't need to know what the source is when it's a Black Jar submission, and it's all about the smell of it, the taste of it, and what they were calling mouth feel. So
Yes.
I think you're right in there. I think you should enter. And
Yeah.
because if you just won a couple of those, that's validation of exactly what you're describing, and it comes from experts. So
Yeah, how's that? That's an amazing, that's a really great tip. I appreciate hearing that.
yeah, because you've
Yeah.
got them. These people are in Australia. In fact, why not just invite some of them to sample that?
Well, do you know, maybe you're talking about my good friend Jess Loccanini. She's a honey.
Yeah, I did an
You know
interview
Jess?
just like we're doing right now. We did that interview as soon as she had gotten back from Paris, in fact.
Yes.
So, and she's been here in the United States to some of the conferences.
Well, she was at my launch. We had a huge launch event last week where we invited lots of people who have been around the project, and she was there. And I started a conversation with her about this and got too busy because the night was a busy night to have when you're the founder of a company launching a product. And this is exactly what the phone call is going to be later today. Is Jess, we need to start doing something with this honey.
And she's perfect because she's open, she's excited. She was part of that group in Melbourne, so I think yeah, Simon, I think you know exactly what path you need to follow there. Because this puts it in the fine wine category of honey.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is disappointing, I have to say, that you were making beer when you should have been making mead, but I'm not going to hold that against you. So,
can I add to that story? I accept it. I take that. Do you know what? After getting the bees, I never ended up making the honey wheat beer that I was wanting to make. The whole purpose of doing it got completely derailed because I just loved the bees and I loved learning, and that was the end of the beer. So much for that foundation story for how I became a beekeeper.
Perfect. Well, the next question I'm going to ask, because people are going to want to know, they're sitting there ready to push buttons and go shopping. You have a fundraiser that's coming up. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. So we launch, it would be the 25th of March, your time, 26th of March here in Australia. And we're doing that on Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding platform. I'm sure people these days are fairly familiar with a crowdfunding platform. And essentially that's pre-sales. So you're putting an order in for a product that will be delivered later. So we're putting a product out there. We're hoping deliveries around October. I've got internal deadlines that are a bit sooner than that, but I think it's safe to say October. But that way, if I'm a month late, it's not so bad. But that's the time frame that we're working on that. I realise with your seasons up there, that how does that fit in? Well, that's just where we're at. And then people are curious about the pricing, and I'm sure that's what you're curious about too. So the harvester, and we put together a starter kit, and a starter kit is the harvester in 2 frames full of cassettes and some spare cassettes, along with a few little accessories that make it all nice and easy. And of course, you can get more frames than just the 2. And the price that we're showing for that, and I've got to try to make my US dollar conversion about right, but it's around $424 US, give or take a little bit of exchange rate. And hopefully there's no tariffs that are thrown in there between now and then.
Yeah, but that's anybody's guess. We don't know that.
Yeah. So around $424 US. And the reason that we take that's the price that we're taking to the crowdfunding campaign. The reason people get involved with the crowdfunding campaign is because there's usually a sweetener in the deal, because we're looking for backers and support. In the next week or so, and maybe people won't, I don't know when this will go to air, but before the campaign, we'll launch the offer that goes to those people that are prepared to back us in this campaign. And that offer will make the deal look more generous, of course. So, yeah, we look at it and go, here's a frame that will last probably 15 or 20 years in your beehive. Here's a machine that means that you don't have to worry about all of this other equipment. And I can tell you what, I can't wait to have one. I only have prototypes at the moment. I've got to be very careful with them. I can't wait, Fred, to go home one day with one of the for real products and be able to get everything out of my garage, and for my wife to have the garage and a lot of that space back, because all of that equipment builds up, doesn't it? And to think that I can go back to having more space. So the cost of all of those other bits of equipment really add up. I've tried all of the different uncapping machines. I've tried all of the different filters, and that really was a pricey point to be at. So hopefully we're offering something here that people go, yep, I can see that being sensible for them. And again, really looking at those people with 1 to 5 sort of beehives. We're not trying to harvest hundreds of kilos of honey here.
Okay, so when you have that link available, or there's no link yet, right, for your fundraiser?
I'll say it like this. If people go to hivekeepers.com, that's our landing page for where it is now. hivekeepers.com/launch will take them to the crowdfunding page when that's available. So if that's not there right now, you'll just go to our main website, hivekeepers.com/launch, and you'll get taken straight to the Kickstarter campaign from the date that it goes live. And I do encourage people to go to our website where they can get on the wait list, and that's where you get the best information, especially about that special offer that we will bring to the table soon.
Okay, so just a quick rundown again about what will be
Yep.
in the baseline launch, what's
Yep.
included, the frames. So 2 frames, they're full, deep Langstroth frames, and the
Correct.
extractor unit.
That's right. There's a small accessory pack that goes with that as well.
Okay, what's in the accessory pack?
So we're still finalising that, but I love having something nice like this. We've tried so many different bowls, a little honey bowl for you. We've got a different one of these coming along, but we've tried all the different types of, I call it a spatula, which helps you get the honey out of the bowl. There is the little tool, which we haven't got here to show you, which pops these apart nice and easily. So and a cleaning cloth, just a few basics to keep it all neat and keep it all together.
Okay, so have the bees ever tried to put bee bread in those cassettes?
Not for us yet, but I'm sure it'll happen.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll happen, won't it? Like someone will put, we'll have eggs put in here one day. All these things will happen to someone. I suggest you avoid that.
Yeah. Now, so you've had it in service for a while. What's the best method of cleaning it up? If you want to get all the wax and everything off of it and put it away for winter storage or whatever, what do you recommend?
Well, there's different options there. I like cleaning the cassettes up by giving them to the bees in the top of the hive to clean up for a day or so. That works well and they're clean. You can freeze these with honey in them, without honey in them. You can pressure wash them. You're not going to damage the frame or the cassette by pressure washing it. So that can be done quite easily. But really we've still got to learn a lot about that, what is going to be the most suitable way for people, Fred. But to me, it's just get these clean. There's not going to be, there's not extensive beeswax there for small hive beetle or wax moth or other things to be attracted to. I'm sure they could smell them out, but there's not going to be a lot of resources there for them to use. So it comes pretty simple, a quick clean up by the bees, and I think you could store them safely in an airtight container.
And so what's the high temperature tolerance of that plastic? Because for example, I take complicated plastic structures that's got propolis and beeswax on it.
Yeah.
I dip them at 155 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yep.
Do we know the temperature tolerance of your cassettes?
I don't have an answer for that at the moment. We're still making that final selection on plastics. And another one that people are curious about too, and I can't answer it yet either, is the ability to radiate these.
Okay.
I don't have a clear answer. We're still making that final determination on the plastics to go to manufacture with. And we're very aware of those points that people would like us to be thinking about there. But I wouldn't answer that any other way at the moment.
Okay, and let's head off any other questions here. Once the cassettes are installed on the frame, are there any hiding places in the frame? Do you have small hive beetles where you live?
Yeah, sure do. I can show you, I'll do my best to show you. I'm going to jump out a view so you can see it. This is all around here. It's smooth, it pops in. The next generation cassette design and frame design actually pops in when you push it in. At the moment, they're a little bit loose just because of this version. There's not anywhere. There's a little groove there, which is for your fingers to hold, which is just great, to be honest. And I will lift it up without it all falling everywhere. It's just smooth all the way around. But I appreciate what people are saying there is we don't need homes for other nasties and bugs. You won't find that here. It just pops in so neat and tidy. The only thing you get, the bees tend to propolise just around here, and it's just the finest line of propolis. But it's a good question. I'm glad people are thinking about that.
And the next question is frame spacing. Is it the same as all the standard frames, or does it take more or less? Yes, it is. Space?
Full disclosure, this one's probably slightly undersized in terms of width and length, but that's just because of the method of manufacture on our prototype, and it will be a standard Langstroth frame as you'd expect. Space it out as always.
Okay, so an
as you
8 frame will hold 8 of them, 10 will hold 10, and
you bet.
the nukes will hold 5/5. Well, Simon, I
That's
want
right.
to thank you because I think this is a very interesting innovation, and I appreciate. Actually, I don't know the name of my viewer that told me to look you up, which is why I left a
Yep,
comment on your YouTube video. For people that are watching and listening, also there's a YouTube channel that is also it's under the same name, Hive Keepers.
that's correct. If you
Is that
look at
right?
any of the socials with Hive Keepers, you should find us now.
Okay. I want to thank you for your time and for sharing this, and I'm sure that your Kickstarter is going to go fantastic, by the way.
I
So,
appreciate hearing that, and it's
yep,
been great to chat. Thanks for having me.
yep, absolutely. And that wraps up another episode of Interviews with Innovators. If you're enjoying this series, I invite you to subscribe so you won't miss a single episode. Always take a moment to check the links and updated information down in the video description. I'm Frederick Dunn, and this has been The Way to Be.